Welcome to the Dynasty Tailgate podcast, a part of the IDP Army Podcast Network. It is great to be back with you all. College football season is here, folks. It's finally here. We can stop speculating. We can stop talking about recruiting. We can put last year's draft class completely behind us now because a whole new batch of college athletes are going to become NFL players throughout this next several months, all the way until we start talking about them in January as part of the draft process. But, for anybody listening to this podcast, the draft process starts right now. So with further ado, let's just get into it. All right. I hope everybody out there is having a good morning, evening, or afternoon. So I've been off for a couple weeks, kind of just letting the preseason play out in college football. There's a couple stories that I've gathered that I want to talk about before we get into the actual tailgate of it all, because week 0 is here, and I'm very excited about that. But first, let's talk about a little bit of news. So Sam Hartman, the Wake Forest quarterback who accounted for 50 total touchdowns last season, is out indefinitely with an unidentified injury. Now, we're not sure if that is physical or if that is a mental injury. Those are injuries too. I know that this is 2022. We're trying to all learn about this, but yes, mental injuries are a actual concern as much as a real. Here I go. Not a real injury, but they're all real injuries. They're all real injuries. So we don't know which one it is. They have not really specified. But they're confident that he'll be back this season. Mitch Griffiths is going to be the starter. He has never taken a snap for the team, so we're going to have to see how Wake Forest is able to account for that. But Sam Hartman is going to be out indefinitely. So here's what that means for us. So I had him as the 8th ranked QB going into the next draft, 2023. Definitely had him on the list of candidates for possible people that could jump into the first round. I did not have him in the first round. We actually cut that list off at 7, which is right where he was at the 8th spot. But with him not being there, it's less tape to evaluate, but it doesn't necessarily put him in a bad spot for the actual draft, because we're not really positive exactly what kind of problem this is. It does not sound physical, because it's not like he's going to have surgery, or he's not going to a doctor to get, an x-ray of some sort. Nothing like that has been stated that's going on. So I'm assuming it's a mental injury. That's why I gave that little horrible attempt at a preface of that entire conversation. But I hope everything's going well for him. I hope whatever is going on in his life gets cleared up. I hope that he comes back stronger than ever. And I have no doubt that he will. So what that means for Wake Forest for the season is the offense is not going to – the defense was bad last season. If I can remind you all of last season, there were several games where it was just, can we score more than the opponent? It was not, hey, let's make a big stop here on defense. It was more like, hey, Sam, can you go out there and win us a football game? So we're not really going to get the opportunity to see him a whole lot. Maybe, it's indefinitely, so you don't really know when he's going to come back. But more to come on that person. So I will be taking him out of the rankings and moving somebody that was out of it back in. We will update that after when week 1 starts. I'm not saying week 0 isn't a real football weekend, because it is kind of like a nice little appetizer, but the games this weekend are kind of a rough slate, but there is some people that we need to pay attention to. So we'll get to them in just 1 second. One more person, though, we need to be looking at, and that is Rasheen Ali. He led the nation in touchdowns last year for the Marshall Thundering Herd. He has taken a leave of absence for the team to address an unidentified issue. I'm not even going to try to speculate exactly what's going on there. It's up to him. He can figure it out, and then he can come back when need be. I did not have Rasheen Ali in my top 10 running backs. That wasn't necessarily a mistake. It's just it's kind of like Sincere McCormick last year, if anybody remembers him. For the UTSA, were they the Roadrunners? Some bizarre mascot. I can't remember. He was leading the nation in rushing. He was very involved with that offense. If you ever played DraftKings for college football, Sincere McCormick was that guy. Well, Rasheen Ali was kind of that guy too. on a lesser level. But this year he was planning to be somebody who possibly broke out. But Sincere McCormick, the only reason I bring Sincere McCormick up is that he probably isn't even going to make the roster for the Raiders, which is where he got signed to because he did not get drafted. So that's why I did not have him up there, because I did not see enough from him last year to think that he is a transcendent running back and more of just taking over playing a bad schedule. We'll just say that. But he's taking a leave of absence. I was definitely going to have him on the watch list. He was definitely going to be somebody that we brought up week to week, especially if you start having these banana stat lines that we're used to seeing from some of these players. So don't know what he's dealing with. I hope he deals with it and comes back strong and stronger than ever, because, he did have an amazing year last year, and it would be very shocking to not see him get to play this season. So I really hope that he can come back. I hope he deals with whatever he's going through and can get back stronger than ever. So let's just jump into it. This is week 0, baby. We're finally here to college football. So kicking off on Saturday, the slate is a little bleak. I don't want to sugarcoat it for you. There are some very talented players playing, but there's not necessarily a marquee matchup that I'm going to try to shift you to. Nebraska and Northwestern are playing across the pond, which could be kind of fun to see. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think they're playing in Ireland, and neither of those teams are Notre Dame. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that they may have booked Notre Dame, and they accidentally just, they tried to book Notre Dame, and they just got one of those in teams. So they got Nebraska and Northwestern to come over and play. Just kidding. I don't know if that's actually what happened, but it seems that way based on them both being in teams and Notre Dame being the Fighting Irish. It would make the most sense for them to go over there. But that should be a fun game. Nebraska hopefully will roll. I think we're not expecting Nebraska to necessarily have a bounce back season, but Scott Frost is, this is kind of make it or break it for him. So I'm really hoping that Nebraska can figure things out, because it would be a sad state of affairs if they open up across the pond against Northwestern and lose the game. It would be so sad to see that to be the way that their season ended. Because honestly, if they lose to Northwestern, Nebraska might as well pack it up, pack it in, because it's over after that. So hopefully not, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, moving on to teams that might actually matter, and one of those is Florida State. So we're going to get to see Florida State open up against Duquesne, I believe is how you said that. Florida State should not have high expectations for this season. I think it's going to be another rough go of it. I would say losing a head-to-head recruiting battle versus Jacksonville State or not Jacksonville State, I think it's just Jackson State. Whichever one Deion Sanders is coaching, that team, Jackson State, I think it's either Jackson State or Jacksonville State, whichever one. Losing that head-to-head recruiting battle it's just not good for the state of affairs in Florida State. So I'm hoping they can have a better season this year. Jordan Travis is the quarterback this season, so I'm interested to see him. The only player from Florida State that we're really watching this year, not that can't be fixed at some point, is Akeem Dent, the cornerback from there. He's got a lot that he needs to work on. It's definitely not someone that I'm over the top with. I would have said 2 years ago, Akeem Dent would have been somebody I would have really been focused on heavily, but for the time being, it's just tough to say that's somebody that, you need to be looking for your IDP rosters. I mean, thing is, I'm still going to mention him, so I guess that is it. He only played 10 games last season, so it'll be nice to see him get back in there. Hopefully he hit the weight room. That's I'm not trying to hate on anybody, but that's just kind of where I view him and where I think he needed to go. So that's all I'm saying. The other team playing this weekend that this is one of the more exciting ones, I think, for me to see, and that is North Carolina. So North Carolina loses Sam Howell this past weekend or this past season to the draft. He gets drafted to Washington to be a commander, which is all fine and dandy. Like, I don't have any problem. Like, I think that Sam Howell was maybe helped a lot by his class. of receivers the year before with De'Ami Brown, and he had the Javonte Williams, Michael Carter backfield that really helped him out a whole lot. So I'm not going to lie, I think that they helped him out quite a bit. But last season, he did not have a bad season, and that was mostly due to Josh Downs, who I have ranked as my fourth wide receiver fifth wide receiver. No, fourth wide receiver. Oof. Quentin Johnson. Haven't moved him up yet, but yes, we're keeping with Josh Downs. Josh Downs is a good wide receiver for the University of North Carolina. Last year, he had 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. He had 101 receptions. I'm excited. The problem is you got a new quarterback in there. You don't exactly know what you're going to get from that. So they're playing Florida A&M this weekend. So this should be a really good, easy tune-up game for them. I'm hoping for the best for Josh Downs because I believe in him as a wide receiver. He is only 5'10", but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's out of it. I don't think that should hurt him as much as a lot of people say that height does. I think that he will be able to get open, get those big receiving plays done down the field, and he will be able to handle himself. And I'm not worried at all. So I'm really excited to see Josh Downs this weekend. So we'll see. They play at 7:15 against Florida A&M, and that'll be one of the games I'm paying attention to heavy. It's on the ACC network, so not necessarily prime time, but still gets a good placing. Other than that, your late night games are Nevada, New Mexico State, Vanderbilt, Hawaii. This one's really just for the betting public. There is an SEC team involved here, but it's the absolute worst SEC team possible, which is Vanderbilt. After a few drinks during the day, maybe this will just be a nice game to kick back to and check out. But I'm not heavily focused on any players in that game. I'm really hoping there's somebody that pops out of one of these games that will, have me looking twice at them. But I do not think of that, this weekend as being a prime marquee weekend. The football schedulers out there did not put any good teams to playing during this weekend. So hope for the best, but it's just going to be a fun weekend watching football. It's just going to get us a little taste, a little nip of the college football fruit. So I'm excited for that. Cannot wait to see. But that's your weekend slate. That's week 0. I'll end this podcast, but we're going to kind of talk about the overview of the college football season, kind of what my expectations are, what I'm betting is going to happen. Last year, I was pretty bad at guessing. I overguessed the hell out of Georgia last season. I thought that they wouldn't make it, and then they ended up making it. So that's really cool. That's exactly how I want my predictions to go, to be just completely wrong. But this season, I am on the Ohio State bandwagon 100%. Their team is so good that I'm just not positive what the weak link is here. So I was kind of reading up on a little bit of college football coverage. ESPN does a phenomenal job. I'm rolling my eyes. Sorry, people that are on the podcast. I'm rolling my eyes because they had Stephen A. Smith, who said CJ Stroud is a more of a running mobile quarterback. And I don't know if all of you hopefully have watched a college football game before, one of his games before. But if you haven't, he is absolutely the opposite of a runner. Like literally, he only had, I think, 3 games last season where he even had double-digit rushing yards, and that was just from scrambles. Like he's not a runner at all. So I was really appreciative of Stephen A. Smith putting that narrative out there, which makes absolutely no sense at all. He is the opposite of runner. I'm almost positive that he was thinking of Bryce Young. Like Bryce Young's not even a runner really. He's more of a passer, but he's more mobile than CJ Stroud is. And I'm kind of confused exactly what Stephen A. Smith was thinking when he said that, but whatever is what it is. Ohio State's by far my favorite team this season, and it's led by Jackson Smith and Jigba. They have the number 1 wide receiver. I'm really excited for that. They also have Marvin Harrison Jr. Yes, for all you people that are, I don't know, probably 28 and above, you remember how crazy good Marvin Harrison was for the Colts. Well, his son is now playing college football, if you want to feel just a little bit older than you were already feeling today. So And then they have the best running back in the nation, Travion Henderson. So, if you have the best wide receiver, the best running back, and you could argue one or two on CJ Stroud for quarterback, it's going to kind of make you a really good football team. So I'm not really sure who's going to beat them, and I don't think it's going to be anybody in the Big Ten because Big Ten not known for offense. They really aren't. They're going for good defense, and Michigan was stripped for parts, to be honest with you. And, they lose Ojabo, they lose Aiden Hutchinson. Like those were two of their big name Michigan, players. Those were their heavy hitters, and they're just not gonna. I mean, they're still gonna be good on defense. They're just not gonna be that good. So, and that's through Stephen A. Smith, obviously, to pick the Big Ten. So to win the Big Ten, which was kind of like, well, of course you did, because you only know Jim Harbaugh, and you just think for some reason he's gonna win it. Which they won it once. That was it. Not going to happen again. Ohio State's back. Their defense could be better. There's a lot of question mark pieces on the defense, so kind of hoping for the best for the defense. But I think that's the far and away best team in college football. I'm kind of confused why anybody else would think opposite of that, but that's just me. Number 2 I have is Georgia. I think they finished as number 2 in the nation. Their defense is they're not as good as they were last season. Last season, they were one of the best college defenses I've ever seen on a field, but they're still really, really good. Don't want that to be confused. They have Keely Ringo back there, who's the best cornerback in the nation, locked down, and they really just reloaded a bunch of the positions that they already have. They have Jalen Carter, who's the top defensive tackle. I've seen a lot of mock drafts have him as potentially the number 2 pick in the NFL draft for 2023, a defensive tackle being drafted that high. It's bonkers. You just one of those things you just don't see, because when you're going that high in the draft, you're really after edge rushers, you're after O linemen potentially, and then you're after any of the offensive positions that make sense, not running back, but the other two. I just cannot see how a defensive tackle makes it that high, but anything can happen. He is really good, and that defense is going to be really good again. They are going to they're going to take a step back from last season, but still, they barely allowed 10 touchdowns the entire season last year. So Georgia is going to be back. Their offense is a little bit more suspect. They lost a couple of pieces. They still have Stetson Bennett, who I don't think is anything special, but whatever. He's won a national championships, better than a lot of quarterbacks can say. Like my favorite quarterback is Baker Mayfield. He never won a championship. Stetson Bennett did. So, that kind of experience could mean something, I guess. On to number 3 is Clemson. This one's a little bit of a big question mark. This is more of their schedule in the ACC working out perfectly for them than it does for actually like the talent on the team. The defense is going to be superb. Like, I don't want to get that confused. They got Miles Murphy, Brian Breesy, those. It's going to be a great defense. Amuka, the cornerback. I'm not worried about the defense at all. The offense is the bizarre part of that team. I really don't know what to make of it. They're going to start probably with DJ Ukulele. No, I already lost how to say that name. But I think there's I can't remember the freshman's name either. Man, I'm having a mind blank. The freshman's going to come in there. I think he might be better than DJ is currently. We'll see. It's really just a quarterback away, and I think if they if they win, but they start not looking great, they might make a quarterback switch that would mean a lot for them. So last season they went up against Georgia in the first game, and they didn't score a point, and a lot of people freaked out, and then we ended up finding out Georgia was one of the best defenses of all time, and I think that was something that we kind of overreacted to in the moment. But this year, Clemson's really going to need to put up or shut up. They obviously lost their defensive coordinator because he's now coaching at Oklahoma. They lost their athletic director to Miami, which was interesting. Very interesting way of doing things there. But we'll see. I'm not worried. Dabo always puts something together. So I think Clemson finished as number 3 just because of their schedule. And then number 4, I kind of have a surprise here, and that's Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame could have a special year coming up here. And they did just lose Kyron Williams. They did lose man. The safety from Notre Dame that I'm blanking on right now because I cannot think. Kyle Hamilton. And so you would think they're going to take a step back. I actually don't. I think that their head coach Brian Kelly was holding them back. And I think that now we're going to see what Notre Dame's actually capable of. And I think now that Brian Kelly's down in LSU, he's going to be down there a whole bunch, and he's going to be having a fun time down in the Bayou. But now I think Notre Dame's actually going to get to work and put together a decent season. There's really nobody on that team that I'm like heavily scouting a whole bunch, but there is plenty of good talent on that team and players that could be, could make their mark as the season goes on. So obviously that means Bama is not in my top 4 for the season. But I think it's just because Georgia's there, and I think that they are going to slip up a couple of times this season. I think that, they could lose to Texas A&M. That could happen. I don't want to put anything past Jimbo Fisher. It happened last season. They lost to them last season. It very well could happen. The team lost a lot of talent, and it's not that they didn't reload. It's just I'm not as big of a believer in some of those players. So if you're an Alabama fan out there, I don't think I'd be necessarily worried because your team's still going to be really freaking good, and you've still got the best quarterback in the nation, most likely, with Bryce Young. But your receiving core is not where it needs to be, and the running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, he wasn't really that effective at Georgia Tech last year. We're just kind of like propping him up because he's going to Alabama. And I'm not going to be the fool to say that he's not going to be good because when he, puts up 1,500 yards on the ground, everybody's going to be like, well, you said he wasn't going to be any good here. Well, okay, fine. He wasn't good at Georgia Tech. So we'll see what happens. He's, recruited, he transferred in. So I guess we'll see what happens. So, that's why I have Bama at number 5, but so it's not that crazy. So not that wild. Number 6, 7, and 8 is Utah, Oklahoma, and Michigan. I think the Big 12 is going to eat each other. That's why I have Oklahoma down this low. I know I am an Oklahoma fan. Oklahoma Stan will be there for I'm going to the Nebraska football game, so that'll be a lot of fun to report back from. But they're going to have a couple slip-ups this year. It's first year Brent Venables. They have Dylan Gabriel behind center, who was pretty good when he was at Central Florida, but he was never really good, not very good. Marvin Mims should be good this year. Theo Weiss is back. Eric Gray hopefully is going to be used properly, which he was not last season. So there's a lot of things and that defense should be ferocious. I don't want to say it now because I don't want to be wrong, but there's a lot of good pieces on that defense that deserve draft looking at. And I guess maybe it's going to have to be me, but I don't want to be considered a homer just yet. So we'll see what happens. I believe in the defense, but we'll see. Utah, I think, is going to be better than USC this season. That's not me being a Lincoln Riley hater. I think that Utah was very good last season. They beat the brakes off of Oregon when we all thought that Oregon was probably going to march their way into a playoff spot, and Utah went in there and said, "Nope, not today." So Utah is one of those teams I'm looking at. I think they're going to run the Pac-12, and I think they're going to win. USC is not going to be in the top 10, unfortunately. 8, Michigan. They still have a good team coming back. They just lost a lot of pieces for my liking. I mentioned the 2 players on defense earlier, but they also lost Hassan Haskins on offense, which was the main part of their running attack. I don't think they're going to be bad. I just don't believe as much in Harbaugh as a lot of people do. And I think that people equate John Harbaugh's success to Jim Harbaugh sometimes, and it just kind of frustrates everyone else. 9 and 10, rounding out the top 10, is Baylor and NC State for me. NC State's not getting a lot of love this season yet, but I think they need to start. And it starts with the quarterback, Devin Leary. He is a very good quarterback this season. And the Wolfpack are somebody that people need to be looking out for because I think they could have a special run this season, one that you're not usually ready to see. I think that they're that team. And then Baylor or Oklahoma could be flip-flopped. Kind of depends on what ends up happening here. But, we'll see. I personally think Oklahoma's better than Baylor. Baylor, come at me. Don't care. It happens. It be that way sometimes. But that's my prediction. Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame in the 4-team playoff. Uh, Ohio State and probably Georgia to play for the title, and then Ohio State wins. Um, that's just kind of what I think is going to happen. This is a very interesting college football season. Usually, you can just chalk in the. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Most of these teams are chalk as is: Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame. But I just don't think Bama is as dominant. I don't think it. I don't think it's going to be as dominant of a season as it normally is for Alabama. I just really don't. I think that they're going to be in some close games, and I think they could slip up a couple of times. I know that they're the NFL factory, but with NIL being the way that it is, a lot of places are going to be in NFL factories because, like, the little known secret of college football is that Alabama's been paying people to play there for years. Like, that's been the way that it's been for a long time. I'm just so confused how so many people don't understand that they're not winning recruiting battles. They've just been giving players money through other ways. I mean, many players have come out and said that that's how it works at Alabama. And a lot of other places were watched way too hard to be able to make that happen, or they just had like moral conundrums, which is silly in any athletic sport to have a moral conundrum. But Nick Saban, he knows where the bodies are buried there. There's plenty of people that know exactly how they've been winning all these championships and getting all these good players. So that time's coming to an end because now anybody can give money to anyone, and it doesn't matter as much. The rules are kind of, not the way that they used to be. So I think NIL is going to make things a little bit more even for everyone. This conference realignment stuff is going to make things more interesting for everyone. And it's going to be so strange when Oklahoma and Texas join the SEC in a couple of years. That'll be very weird and kind of a strange way of watching college football because they've been, Big 12, Big 8 teams for the entire time they've existed. So seeing them join a conference like the SEC is just very strange. And I personally can't wait for it because the Big 12 is a joke, and they've known it for ever since they started the Longhorn Network, and they agreed to that. The conference has been a joke ever since then. So, kind of been waiting for them to die for a long time now. But conference is finally disappearing ish. We're gonna try to add Houston and some other goofy teams, Cincinnati, try to make this a legitimate conference again. But we all know what the main things are here. It's going to be Big Ten, SEC, and that's just how it's going to be. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Ohio State's going to be your champion. Bookmarking this now so we can get back to it when, they don't even make the playoff and everybody can laugh in my face. But that's just based on the talent on the team, based on the looking over of the recruits and trying to, predicate how the draft is going to go. That's just what I think is going to happen. So I appreciate you all tuning in. Week 1 preview will happen next week, which I will cover every position and what they're doing next weekend. So don't worry. The actual analysis of the players and what they're doing will be happening. But week 0 is kind of a weak weekend, but it's still college football and we still love it. I'm excited to excited for you all to listen, and I appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please follow my social at Hombre Vendor. Please come on there, talk college football. I love talking college football, and this is the perfect time of year to get into it. If you're an NFL diehard and you don't watch a lot of college football and you're just like not understanding how to navigate which games to watch and stuff, that is what this podcast is for. So I appreciate any and all feedback. If you got some, please do. Give me your list of players. Don't mind it. So thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.